When the noise of the world grows loud, and the mind grows weary from constant asking, there comes a sacred moment when the soul realizes that God is not reached through speech, but through stillness. Silence is not emptiness, it is fullness waiting to be recognized. In the hush beyond words, the heart learns a deeper language, one not shaped by sound but by awareness. To talk to God in silence is to step away from the restless surface of life and descend into its living depth, where every sincere longing is already understood before it is expressed. Human beings have prayed for centuries with lips moving and voices raised, yet the most intimate prayers have always been those whispered by the soul itself. Silence is the altar where the ego bows and the spirit rises. When outer speech ceases, inner perception awakens. The mind, freed from its habit of constant commentary, begins to listen. In that listening, a subtle transformation occurs. Prayer changes from request to communion, from effort to surrender. God is no longer a distant listener, but an ever-present reality felt within the calm center of being. True silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is the absence of restlessness. One may sit in a quiet room and still be filled with inner noise, while another may sit amid activity and remain inwardly serene. The silence that allows communion with God is cultivated through devotion, patience, and gentle persistence. Each moment of inward stillness polishes the mirror of consciousness, allowing divine light to reflect without distortion. In such moments, answers come not as words but as clarity, strength, and quiet joy. To talk to God in silence requires courage, for it asks the seeker to let go of demands and expectations. Words often conceal fear and desire, but silence reveals truth. In that revelation, one may encounter weakness, longing, and unfulfilled hope, yet these too become offerings. God is not offended by human frailty, divine presence is drawn to sincerity. When the heart is laid bare without explanation or defense, the soul stands honest before the infinite. Silence teaches trust. It teaches that guidance does not always arrive in dramatic signs, but in gentle intuitions, in sudden peace, in a steady conviction that one is not alone. As the practice deepens, silence becomes a living companion, accessible at any moment. One begins to carry it into daily life, into work, relationships, and challenges. Then prayer is no longer confined to a posture or place. It becomes a continuous inward dialogue, sustained without speech. In silence, the soul remembers its origin. The breath slows, the heart softens, and awareness expands beyond personal limits. Time seems to loosen its grip, and the present moment reveals its sacredness. To talk to God in silence is to discover that divine communion has always been waiting beneath the surface of thought, ready to be known the instant the mind grows quiet enough to listen, and in that listening the soul begins to feel guided, protected, uplifted, as though an unseen hand were gently leading it inward toward truth, peace, and an ever-deepening awareness of divine companionship within every breath and every moment of stillness. Silence is the highest form of prayer, because it rises beyond the reach of human speech and enters the realm where the soul communes directly with the infinite. Words are shaped by the mind, limited by thought, and colored by desire, but silence belongs to the spirit, where truth exists without form. When the tongue becomes still and the mind ceases its restless movement, prayer is no longer something one does, it becomes something one is. In that state, the heart does not ask, argue, or explain. It simply offers itself, open and receptive, like a calm lake reflecting the vast sky above it. Such silence is not passive, it is intensely alive, filled with awareness and devotion. In ordinary prayer, people often speak to fill a sense of distance, believing that repetition or eloquence will bridge the gap between themselves and the divine. Yet the deepest union is not achieved by reaching outward, but by sinking inward. Silence turns the direction of prayer from expression to absorption. The soul learns to rest in presence rather than pursuit. In this resting, there is a subtle recognition that the divine does not need to be persuaded or informed, for it already knows every unspoken longing, every hidden fear, every sincere intention. Silence acknowledges this truth with humility and trust. The mind resists silence because it fears losing control. It is accustomed to movement, analysis, and commentary, and it equates activity with purpose. But prayer is not an activity of the ego, it is a surrender of it. As silence deepens, layers of mental noise begin to fall away. First go the obvious distractions, then the quieter streams of thought, and finally the subtle sense of personal doership. What remains is a simple awareness, calm yet luminous. In this awareness, prayer reaches its purest form, free from demand and expectation. Silence refines perception. When words fade, intuition sharpens. Guidance no longer comes as a voice but as an inner certainty, a gentle knowing that does not need explanation. This is why silence is more powerful than spoken prayer, for it allows the soul to receive rather than merely send. Many seek answers through questions, yet silence teaches that answers arise naturally when the mind is clear. Like seeds sprouting in fertile soil, insights emerge effortlessly in the stillness of receptive consciousness. The highest prayer does not attempt to shape the will of the divine, but aligns the human will with it. Silence accomplishes this alignment by dissolving resistance. In quiet awareness, personal desires loosen their grip, and a deeper intention surfaces, one that seeks harmony rather than control. The heart begins to trust that what is needed will come in the right way and time. This trust is itself a prayer, more eloquent than any spoken words. Silence also purifies emotion. In verbal prayer, emotions often surge unchecked, carrying anxiety, urgency, or subtle bargaining. In silent prayer, emotions are observed rather than indulged. They rise and fall within the field of awareness, gradually losing their power to disturb. What remains is a gentle devotion, steady and sincere. This devotion does not fluctuate with circumstances, it is anchored in inner stillness. Such steadiness allows prayer to continue beyond formal moments, flowing quietly through daily life. The practice of silent prayer requires patience. At first, silence may feel empty or uncomfortable, as though something essential were missing. This discomfort arises because the mind has not yet learned to rest without stimulation. With persistence, however, silence reveals its richness. What once felt like emptiness becomes fullness, vibrant with peace and clarity. The seeker discovers that silence contains more than words ever could, holding wisdom, comfort, and strength in abundance. In silence, the sense of separation begins to dissolve. Prayer no longer feels like a conversation between two distant points but like a recognition of unity. The boundary between the one who prays and the one who is prayed to grows thin, almost transparent. This is the sacred mystery at the heart of silent prayer, the realization that the divine presence sought has always been within. Words may point toward this truth, but silence allows it to be experienced directly. As silence deepens, the breath becomes subtle, the body relaxes, and awareness expands beyond physical sensations. Time seems to slow or lose its significance. In these moments, prayer is no longer bound by duration or form. A single instant of true silence can carry the depth of a lifetime of spoken supplication. Such moments leave a lasting imprint, gently reshaping character, softening reactions, and awakening compassion. Silence teaches reverence. It reminds the seeker that the sacred cannot be captured or confined by language. Just as the vastness of the sky cannot be held in the palm of a hand, the divine cannot be contained in words. By choosing silence, the soul bows before mystery, acknowledging that some truths are meant to be lived rather than spoken. This humility opens the heart further, allowing grace to flow without obstruction. In daily life, silent prayer becomes a refuge. Amid noise, conflict, and uncertainty, one can return inward to that quiet center, where peace remains untouched. This inner silence acts as a stabilizing force, guiding responses and restoring balance. Gradually, the distinction between prayer and life fades. Every action performed with inward stillness becomes an offering, every breath a reminder of presence. Silence as the highest form of prayer is not an escape from the world, but a way of engaging with it more deeply. From silence arises clarity, from clarity compassion, and from compassion wise action. The soul learns to move through life anchored in stillness, listening more than speaking, sensing more than judging. In this way, prayer ceases to be an occasional act and becomes a continuous state of being, where even in the midst of activity the heart remains quietly attuned, aware, and surrendered, listening inwardly, resting in presence, open to guidance that flows without sound, without effort, without end, as the silence itself continues to deepen and unfold, revealing ever subtler layers of communion within the vast inner stillness where prayer lives and breathes without words, without form, without limit, unfolding moment by moment within the soul's quiet awareness, waiting to be entered again and again, beyond speech, beyond thought, beyond the need to say anything at all, only to listen and remain, still and receptive. Within the living silence that prays itself, listening to God beyond words begins, when the seeker realizes that divine communication does not belong to the realm of sound. Words arise from thought, and thought belongs to the surface of consciousness, but God speaks from the depth where thought has not yet formed. To listen beyond words is to shift attention from the restless movement of the mind to the quiet awareness beneath it. This listening is not an effort of the ears, but an attunement of the soul. It requires a willingness to be still long enough for subtler perceptions to emerge, perceptions that are easily drowned out by constant mental noise. Most people believe that guidance must come as a clear message, a voice, or a sign that can be easily recognized. Yet divine guidance is often gentle, almost imperceptible to an untrained awareness. It appears as a calm certainty, a quiet nudge, a sense of rightness that does not demand explanation. Listening beyond words means trusting this inner, knowing even when it cannot be logically justified. It means valuing inner clarity over outer confirmation, and allowing intuition to guide where intellect hesitates. The habit of constant thinking interferes with this deeper listening. The mind is accustomed to interpreting, judging, and reacting, and it fills every moment with commentary. In this continuous noise, the subtle language of the divine is overlooked. Listening beyond words requires a conscious withdrawal from mental chatter, not by force but by gentle observation. As thoughts are watched without engagement, they gradually lose momentum. In the spaces between them, a different quality of awareness becomes noticeable, quiet yet alert, empty yet full. This inner listening is an act of humility. It acknowledges that the human mind does not possess all answers, and that wisdom flows from a source greater than personal reasoning. When one listens beyond words, there is no demand for immediate solutions. Instead, there is patience, a willingness to wait in uncertainty. This waiting is not passive, it is attentive and reverent. It is the kind of listening that does not interrupt, that does not rush to conclusions, that remains open even when clarity is slow to arrive. Divine communication beyond words often reveals itself through peace. When a decision aligns with inner truth, a sense of calm accompanies it, even if external circumstances are challenging. This peace is not emotional excitement or relief, it is a steady quietness that reassures without convincing. Learning to recognize this peace is part of learning to listen. Over time, the seeker becomes sensitive to subtle inner shifts, noticing how certain thoughts bring contraction, while others bring expansion and ease. Listening beyond words also requires sincerity. The heart must genuinely seek truth rather than confirmation of existing desires. If one listens while secretly insisting on a particular outcome, inner perception becomes clouded. True listening involves surrendering personal agendas and allowing guidance to unfold naturally. This surrender creates an inner openness, where divine wisdom can be felt rather than imagined. Silence supports this form of listening, but silence alone is not enough. One may sit quietly while inwardly rehearsing worries and plans. Listening beyond words demands presence. It asks the seeker to be fully here, attentive to the present moment without clinging to past experiences or future expectations. In presence, awareness becomes refined, and perception sharpens. Subtle insights arise often unexpectedly, like light breaking through clouds. Guidance beyond words is not always dramatic. It may come as a gradual shift in understanding, a slow rearrangement of priorities, or a quiet strengthening of resolve. Sometimes it appears as a sense of restraint, an inner hesitation that prevents action rather than encouraging it. This restraint can be as valuable as inspiration, protecting the seeker from choices misaligned with deeper truth. Listening requires respecting these subtle signals and allowing them to influence behavior. As this practice deepens, listening beyond words extends into daily life. It is no longer confined to moments of meditation or prayer. One begins to listen while speaking, while working, while interacting with others. This listening creates a pause between impulse and response, allowing wisdom to guide action. Speech becomes more measured, actions more thoughtful, reactions less automatic. Life itself becomes a dialogue conducted largely in silence. There are moments when listening beyond words brings discomfort. Inner guidance may challenge habits, attachments, or beliefs long held as familiar. The ego resists such guidance, preferring certainty over truth. In these moments, listening requires courage. It asks the seeker to trust inner clarity, even when it disrupts comfort. Growth often unfolds in this tension between resistance and surrender. Listening beyond words does not mean rejecting reason or experience. Rather, it places them in proper balance. Reason organizes and applies insight, but insight itself arises from deeper listening. When the two work together, understanding becomes both clear and compassionate. Actions informed by such understanding carry a sense of alignment, as though they arise naturally rather than being forced. Over time, the seeker begins to recognize that divine communication has always been present. What changes is not the source but the receptivity. The more one listens beyond words, the more continuous this guidance feels. It no longer appears as occasional insight, but as a steady undercurrent of awareness supporting every choice and perception. This continuity brings confidence. Not the confidence of certainty but the confidence of trust. Listening beyond words also transforms relationships. When one listens inwardly, one begins to listen outwardly with greater empathy. Words spoken by others are heard not only for their content, but for the feeling beneath them. This deeper listening dissolves misunderstanding and softens judgment. Compassion arises naturally when attention is rooted in awareness rather than reaction. The greatest obstacle to listening beyond words is impatience. The mind wants immediate answers, clear instructions, and visible results. Inner guidance unfolds in its own rhythm, often slower than personal desire but always precise. Learning to respect this rhythm is part of spiritual maturity. In patience, listening becomes effortless, no longer strained by expectation. As listening deepens, the sense of separation between the seeker and the source of guidance diminishes. It becomes clear that listening is not directed toward something distant, but toward a presence within. The act of listening and the guidance received feel increasingly unified, as though awareness itself were speaking without sound. In this realization, listening beyond words reveals itself not as a technique but as a state of being, where awareness rests in openness, attentive and receptive, allowing wisdom to arise spontaneously, quietly, continuously, shaping perception, intention, and action from within the still depths of consciousness where no words are needed. Where truth communicates itself directly through presence, through peace, through a silent knowing that unfolds moment by moment, guiding the soul inward and forward at once, without explanation, without sound, without the need to say or hear anything, only to remain alert, receptive, and inwardly listening as awareness deepens further into the subtle current of guidance flowing beneath thought, beneath emotion, beneath identity, inviting the seeker to stay still enough to notice, patient enough to trust, and quiet enough to perceive what has always been speaking silently with an inner stillness, is the doorway to divine guidance, because guidance cannot enter a mind that is constantly in motion. When thoughts rush unchecked, awareness becomes scattered, and perception grows dull. Stillness gathers the mind into a single attentive focus, creating a clear space where insight can arise naturally. This stillness is not forced silence or suppression of thought. It is a relaxed alertness in which the mind rests without strain. In this state, awareness becomes like a calm lake, capable of reflecting truth without distortion. Most people search for guidance by thinking harder, analyzing options, and weighing consequences. While reasoning has its place, it cannot access the deeper currents of wisdom that flow beneath conscious thought. Inner stillness opens awareness to these currents. When the mind grows quiet, intuition becomes audible, not as sound but as clarity. One suddenly knows without knowing how. This knowing does not argue or persuade, it simply is. Such guidance carries a sense of rightness that is felt rather than reasoned. Stillness also dissolves emotional turbulence, which often clouds judgment. Fear, desire, and attachment create inner noise that interferes with perception. In stillness, emotions are not denied but allowed to settle. As they settle, their grip loosens and awareness regains balance. From this balance, guidance emerges uncolored by personal bias. Decisions made from such a state are less reactive and more aligned with deeper values. The doorway of stillness is entered gradually. At first, the mind resists quiet, filling the space with memories, plans, and distractions. This resistance is not an obstacle but part of the process. By observing mental movement without engagement, the seeker learns to remain present even amid activity. Over time, thoughts lose their urgency, and spaces of quiet awareness begin to appear between them. These spaces are the threshold through which guidance enters. Inner stillness teaches receptivity. Guidance is not something to be seized or demanded, it is received. When the mind is still, it becomes receptive like open ground after rain, ready to absorb what is given. In this receptivity, insight arrives gently, often unexpectedly. It may come during meditation, in moments of rest, or in the midst of ordinary activity, when attention is inwardly calm. Stillness allows guidance to flow freely, unblocked by constant mental interference. Stillness also refines sensitivity. As awareness quiets, perception becomes subtle. One begins to notice inner signals that were previously overlooked: a tightening in the chest, a sense of ease in the body, a quiet confidence accompanying certain thoughts. These signals form a language of guidance that is personal yet universal. Learning to read this language requires stillness, for it speaks softly and disappears when the mind becomes noisy. The doorway of stillness leads not only to answers but to alignment. Guidance is not merely information about what to do, it is a harmonizing of intention and action. In stillness, personal will gradually aligns with a deeper order. This alignment reduces inner conflict, allowing actions to arise naturally rather than through struggle. Life begins to feel guided rather than controlled, as though one were moving with a current rather than against it. Stillness also fosters trust. When guidance arises from inner quiet, it carries a sense of reliability. Even when outcomes are uncertain, there is confidence in the direction chosen. This confidence is not arrogance but assurance born of alignment. Trust grows with experience, as the seeker notices how actions taken from stillness tend to lead to clarity and peace, even when challenges arise. The practice of inner stillness extends beyond formal meditation. It becomes a way of meeting life. In conversation, stillness allows one to listen deeply rather than react impulsively. In work, it supports focused attention and creative insight. In difficulty, it provides stability, preventing emotional overwhelm. The doorway of stillness remains accessible in every moment, regardless of external conditions. Stillness does not remove effort from life but transforms it. Actions arising from stillness are efficient and purposeful, free from unnecessary tension. There is less wasted energy in doubt and second-guessing. This efficiency is a sign of guidance at work, streamlining effort by aligning it with deeper intent. Inner stillness also reveals timing. Guidance is not only about what to do but when to act. In stillness, one senses the right moment, feeling when to move forward and when to wait. This sensitivity to timing prevents haste and stagnation alike. It allows life to unfold in rhythm rather than in force. As stillness deepens, guidance becomes continuous. It is no longer sought in moments of confusion alone, but felt as an ongoing presence. Awareness remains subtly attuned, even amid activity. This attunement creates a sense of companionship, as though one were never acting alone. Decisions feel supported from within, reducing anxiety and self-doubt. The doorway of stillness also opens into insight about oneself. Guidance often begins with self-awareness, revealing patterns, habits, and tendencies that shape experience. In stillness, these patterns are seen clearly without judgment. This clarity allows conscious choice rather than unconscious repetition. Guidance thus becomes transformative, reshaping character from the inside out. Stillness invites humility. It reminds the seeker that wisdom does not belong solely to the personal self. By entering stillness, one acknowledges a source of guidance greater than individual reasoning. This humility softens the ego, making space for deeper understanding. In this softened state, learning becomes natural and resistance fades. The more one values inner stillness, the more readily it appears. What begins as a deliberate practice becomes a spontaneous state. Moments of quiet awareness arise naturally throughout the day, gently orienting attention inward. Guidance flows through these moments, subtle yet steady. Inner stillness as the doorway to divine guidance is not a concept to be believed, but an experience to be lived. Each moment of stillness deepens sensitivity, clarity, and trust. Through repeated entry into this doorway, the seeker discovers that guidance has always been present, waiting not to be summoned but to be allowed, emerging naturally when the mind rests, the heart opens, and awareness remains quietly attentive, receptive to the subtle movements of wisdom arising from within, shaping thought, intention, and action without strain, without confusion, without force, as life unfolds guided by an inner quiet that listens, responds, and moves in harmony with a deeper order, moment by moment, breath by breath. Within the living stillness that continues to reveal itself, more fully the longer one remains willing to pause, to listen, and to dwell within that calm center where guidance flows freely, and endlessly surrendering the ego through quiet awareness begins with recognizing how deeply the sense of I is tied to thought, preference, and control. The ego is not an enemy but a habit of identification, a constant movement of claiming, resisting, and comparing. In everyday life, this movement goes unnoticed because it is familiar and continuous. Quiet awareness interrupts this habit, not by opposing it, but by illuminating it. When awareness rests silently, the ego has nothing to grasp, and in that absence of grasping, its dominance weakens naturally. Ego thrives on noise. It feeds on inner commentary, on stories about past and future, on judgments about self and others. Quiet awareness withdraws attention from these narratives. Thoughts may still arise, but they are no longer believed automatically. They are seen as passing events rather than defining truths. This simple shift in perspective loosens the ego's hold. Instead of being the center of experience, the ego becomes an object within awareness, observed rather than obeyed. Surrender through quiet awareness is not an act of submission but of understanding. The ego resists surrender because it equates control with safety. It fears that without constant management, life will collapse into chaos. Quiet awareness reveals a deeper order beneath mental control. When attention rests calmly, experience continues to unfold intelligently without interference. Breathing happens, perception flows, actions arise. This realization gently reassures the ego that it is not solely responsible for life's functioning. As quiet awareness deepens, the impulse to defend a personal image softens. Ego is sustained by the need to appear right, important, or secure. In awareness, these needs are seen clearly. One notices the tension that accompanies self-protection and the relief that follows its release. Awareness does not judge these impulses, it simply sees them. In being seen, they lose intensity. What remains is a sense of ease that does not depend on validation. Quiet awareness also dissolves comparison. Ego constantly measures, ranking experiences, people, and outcomes. This comparison creates separation and dissatisfaction. When awareness rests without commentary, comparison loses relevance. Each moment stands complete in itself. There is no need to measure or evaluate. This simplicity weakens the ego's tendency to divide and claim, allowing a more inclusive perception to emerge. Surrendering ego does not mean losing individuality. It means releasing the rigid self concept that limits expression. In quiet awareness, individuality becomes fluid rather than fixed. One can respond creatively without being bound by habit. Actions arise from presence rather than from the need to maintain an image. This freedom is subtle yet profound, felt as a lightness in being. Resistance is a common reaction when ego begins to loosen. Old patterns resurface, seeking attention. Quiet awareness meets this resistance with patience. There is no struggle to overcome ego, no effort to eradicate it. Struggle would only strengthen identification. Awareness simply remains present, allowing resistance to arise and pass. In this allowance, surrender happens naturally. Quiet awareness also reveals the emotional roots of ego. Fear, desire, and insecurity fuel its activity. By staying present with these emotions without avoidance or indulgence, awareness transforms them. Fear loses its urgency when it is fully felt without narrative. Desire softens when it is observed without pursuit. In this process, ego gradually relinquishes control, recognizing that its strategies are unnecessary. Surrender deepens as trust grows. Quiet awareness cultivates trust by showing that life can be met directly, without constant mental mediation. Situations are handled more effectively when responses arise from presence rather than reaction. This effectiveness reinforces trust, encouraging further surrender. Ego's grip loosens not through force but through repeated evidence that awareness is sufficient. In relationships, surrendering ego through quiet awareness transforms interaction. Listening becomes more genuine because attention is not occupied with self-reference. One hears others without preparing a response or defending a position. This openness creates connection. Conflict softens as the need to be right diminishes. Awareness allows understanding to replace argument, empathy to replace judgment. Quiet awareness also changes the experience of success and failure. Ego attaches to outcomes, deriving identity from achievement or disappointment. Awareness observes these reactions without becoming them. Success is enjoyed without pride, failure acknowledged without shame. This balance preserves inner peace regardless of circumstance. Life's fluctuations lose their power to define self-worth. The practice of quiet awareness is simple but demanding. It asks for consistency rather than effort. Each moment of noticing without judgment weakens egoic identification. Over time, awareness becomes more stable. Silence is no longer an occasional experience but a continuous background. Ego still appears, but it no longer dominates. It functions as a practical tool rather than a ruler. Surrender through awareness reveals a deeper identity beyond ego. This identity is not conceptual, it is experiential. It is felt as presence, as being, as a quiet sense of existence that does not require definition. Resting in this presence brings peace that is not dependent on conditions. From this peace, compassion arises naturally, as the boundary between self and others becomes less rigid. Quiet awareness also brings humility. Seeing ego clearly dissolves the illusion of separateness and superiority. One recognizes the shared human tendency toward identification and fear. This recognition fosters kindness, both toward oneself and others. Judgment softens, replaced by understanding. As surrender deepens, life feels less burdensome. The constant effort to control, protect, and enhance the self diminishes. Energy previously consumed by inner conflict becomes available for creativity and service. Actions feel lighter, more spontaneous. There is a sense of being carried rather than pushing. The surrender of ego through quiet awareness does not occur once and for all. It is an ongoing process, renewed in each moment of presence. Each time awareness notices identification and gently releases it, surrender deepens. This repetition is not mechanical, it is alive and responsive. Quiet awareness invites intimacy with experience. Nothing is excluded. Joy, sorrow, uncertainty, and clarity are all met with the same openness. In this inclusivity, ego has little ground to stand on. It thrives on exclusion and preference, but awareness embraces all. This embrace dissolves division. Through sustained quiet awareness, surrender becomes effortless. The ego no longer needs to be pushed aside, it naturally steps back. Awareness takes the foreground, calm and attentive. From this place, life unfolds with a sense of guidance and ease. The individual remains engaged yet unattached, active yet inwardly still, moving through circumstances without being possessed by them, grounded in a quiet presence that allows the self to function without domination, revealing a freedom that grows not from assertion but from release, not from striving but from resting, not from control but from trust in the silent intelligence that expresses itself through awareness as it continues to open, soften, and deepen in each moment of quiet observation, where surrender is lived rather than claimed, where the ego fades into transparency and awareness remains clear, receptive, and unburdened, allowing life to be met directly, fully, and simply within the ongoing stillness of conscious presence. Experiencing God's presence within the calm heart begins when attention shifts from outward searching to inward sensing. The heart, when calm, becomes a sanctuary where awareness naturally gathers. This calm is not emotional excitement or sentiment. It is a deep quietness that remains steady beneath changing moods. In this quiet heart, the sense of separation softens. One no longer feels like a seeker reaching toward something distant, but like a presence awakening to itself. The calm heart does not strive, it allows. In that allowance, divine presence is felt not as an idea but as a living reality. The heart grows calm when inner resistance fades. Much agitation arises from wanting life to be different from what it is. The calm heart accepts the present moment without resignation or struggle. This acceptance does not weaken action, it clarifies it. When the heart stops arguing with experience, energy that was bound in tension is released. Awareness settles naturally into the center of being. From this center, presence is perceived as gentle warmth, quiet assurance, and a subtle sense of fullness that requires no explanation. God's presence is not dramatic or overwhelming, it is intimate and steady. The calm heart recognizes this intimacy. It senses a companionship that does not depend on words or images. This companionship is felt as support, as an underlying kindness within existence itself. In moments of calm, one may notice a quiet joy without cause, a peace that does not arise from success or comfort. This peace is the signature of presence, recognized not by thought but by direct feeling. The calm heart listens differently. It does not listen for messages or signs, it listens by being open. In this openness, guidance is felt as inclination rather than instruction. The heart leans naturally toward what is true and away from what is false. This leaning is subtle yet reliable. It does not shout or insist. It gently orients awareness, shaping choices without pressure. Trusting this orientation deepens the experience of presence. As the heart grows calmer, emotional turbulence loses intensity. Feelings still arise, but they move through without overwhelming awareness. Calmness does not suppress emotion, it holds it. Within this holding, emotions reveal their impermanence. They are seen as movements on the surface, not the depth itself. The depth remains peaceful, untouched. Sensing this depth repeatedly strengthens identification with calm awareness rather than with passing states. The calm heart also softens perception of others. Presence experienced inwardly begins to be recognized outwardly. One senses the same underlying awareness in others, even when behavior is difficult. This recognition does not excuse harm, but it dissolves hatred and resentment. Compassion arises naturally when the heart is calm, because calmness perceives unity rather than division. Relationships become less about defense and more about understanding. Experiencing presence within the calm heart transforms solitude. Being alone no longer feels empty or lacking. Solitude becomes rich and nourishing because presence fills the space previously occupied by distraction. Silence is no longer feared. In silence, the calm heart feels accompanied. This companionship is subtle but profound, removing loneliness at its root. The calm heart is cultivated through gentle attention. It cannot be forced into existence. Attempts to calm the heart through control often create more tension. Calmness arises when attention rests without judgment. By observing thoughts and emotions with kindness, the heart gradually relaxes. This relaxation is not a technique, but a natural response to acceptance. As acceptance deepens, calmness becomes more accessible. Presence within the calm heart is experienced in moments of sincerity. When one is honest inwardly, without pretense, the heart relaxes. Pretending, performing, or maintaining an image tightens the heart. Sincerity opens it. In this openness, presence is felt more clearly. One senses alignment between inner truth and outer expression. This alignment brings peace. The calm heart is resilient. External circumstances may change, but inner steadiness remains. This resilience does not mean indifference. The calm heart feels deeply but is not destabilized. Pain is met with tenderness rather than resistance. Joy is enjoyed without attachment. In both, presence remains the constant background, providing stability amid change. As awareness settles in the heart, time loses urgency. The present moment feels sufficient. Anxiety about future outcomes diminishes because the heart trusts the present presence. This trust does not negate planning, it grounds it. Actions arise from calm clarity rather than fear. Life feels guided from within, supported by an unseen order sensed through the heart. Experiencing presence within the calm heart also refines conscience. Ethical clarity emerges naturally, not from imposed rules but from inner sensitivity. Actions that disrupt calmness are recognized as misaligned. Actions that preserve calmness feel right. This sensitivity guides behavior gently, without guilt or fear. The heart becomes its own guide. The calm heart invites gratitude. Gratitude arises spontaneously when presence is felt, not because circumstances are perfect, but because existence itself feels benevolent. This gratitude is quiet, not exuberant. It permeates awareness, coloring perception with appreciation. Ordinary moments acquire depth. Simple experiences become meaningful. Presence in the calm heart reveals a subtle joy that does not depend on stimulation. This joy is steady and understated. It does not seek expression but quietly sustains being. Recognizing this joy shifts priorities. The chase for external satisfaction loses urgency. Contentment grows, rooted in inner fullness rather than accumulation. The calm heart also accommodates uncertainty. Not knowing no longer feels threatening. Presence provides enough stability to rest within questions. This rest allows answers to emerge naturally in their own time. The heart learns patience, trusting that clarity unfolds when needed. This patience reduces anxiety and overthinking. As the calm heart becomes familiar, one returns to it instinctively. In moments of stress, attention drops from the head into the heart. Breathing deepens, awareness softens, presence is remembered. This return becomes a refuge always available. The heart does not close when difficulties arise, it opens further, receiving experience without contraction. Experiencing God's presence within the calm heart is not an achievement but a recognition. It is noticing what has always been present beneath agitation. Each moment of calm reveals this presence anew. The recognition deepens with repetition, becoming more continuous. Eventually, presence is not something experienced occasionally but something lived. The heart remains calm not because life is controlled, but because awareness rests in its natural state. From the calm heart, action flows effortlessly. There is less inner debate, less hesitation. Responses feel appropriate, timely. Even mistakes are met with compassion. Learning occurs without self-judgment. Growth unfolds organically. The calm heart does not withdraw from the world, it engages it with clarity. Work is performed with attention, relationships with care, challenges with steadiness. Presence informs every aspect of life. This integration dissolves the boundary between spiritual moments and ordinary moments. All moments are held within the same calm awareness. As calmness stabilizes, the sense of individuality softens. One feels less separate, more connected. This connection is not conceptual, it is felt. It expresses itself as kindness, patience, and understanding. The heart becomes a meeting place where inner and outer merge. Experiencing God's presence within the calm heart ultimately reveals that presence is not elsewhere. It is here, now, felt whenever the heart is at rest. The more one returns to this rest, the more familiar it becomes. Calmness deepens into stillness, stillness into openness, openness into a living sense of being accompanied from within, where awareness remains settled, receptive, and quietly joyful, perceiving presence not as an event, but as the very ground of experience, continuously available, gently sustaining each moment as the heart stays calm, open, and attuned to the subtle fullness that does not come or go, but remains as the silent essence felt within the depth of the heart's quiet awareness.